Hello, I'm Doug Silliman, the president of the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington. As we enter 2024, a lot is happening in the Middle East and the Gulf region, and we have brought together our intellectual brain trust to help you understand what is happening and how it might affect the United States, the Gulf, and you. So, buckle your seatbelts as we run through the big issues we see ahead in 2024.
Well, we began 2024 with the dire situation in Gaza and the real threat of expansion of the conflict, which poses a real threat for the Gulf states. But we still find these Gulf states, quite interestingly, remaining quite focused on their domestic transformation and the impending energy transition, which is focusing them to rework their economies and even societies in profound ways. And I and my team at AGSIW are going to be taking a much closer look at the way that they're doing this, and looking quite deeply at these transformations and new initiatives, whether they be in tourism, in arts and culture, in entertainment, or in sports, and thinking about how this links the Gulf states with new partners, the opportunities those pose for different kinds of outreach, how it also allows them to put forward a different national face, and also transform their societies in quite profound ways. It also has new demands for Gulf states in terms of how they need to appeal to foreign talent and even bring in foreign visitors, which obviously poses a lot of new vulnerabilities as we look towards this unsettled position within the Middle East today.
Here are a few areas that I'll be watching closely in the year ahead. The first has to do with China-Gulf ties. At the beginning of the year, Saudi Arabia and the UAE officially joined BRICS, along with a number of other Middle Eastern and North African countries. We are following these developments closely through initiatives like the China Gulf Initiative, but a lot of the really interesting developments are happening on a bilateral level. The second point has to do with Gulf sovereign wealth fund dynamics. Dubai recently launched a new sovereign wealth fund that will manage between $80 and $100 billion in assets under management. And the Public Investment Fund had a massive year in 2023, spending roughly a quarter of global sovereign wealth fund investments. This is another important space to watch. The third and final point will be trying to situate Gulf development trends within the broader macroeconomic picture. And of course, there will be a tremendous degree of focus on the largest economy of the region, Saudi Arabia.
I'll be focusing my work this year on the Saudi Arabian economy. Despite some progress towards economic diversification, the Saudi economy is still heavily reliant on oil. So I'll be looking closely at developments in the global oil market to see the extent of oil revenues the kingdom will receive and the ability it'll have to finance the ambitious projects and reforms the kingdom is undertaking. I'll also be looking at further progress for the reforms under Vision 2030. Three things I'll particularly be looking at are firstly, to see whether the upward trend in the female labour force participation rate in Saudi Arabia reasserts itself this year. After increasing rapidly between 2017 and 2021, the rate has flatlined around 35 to 36% since then. Secondly, Vision 2030 puts a lot of emphasis on developing the tourism sector, and it seems to be working. Foreign and domestic tourism is booming, and I expect strong growth to continue this year unless a broader conflict develops in the region. And thirdly, while there's been some pickup in foreign direct investment in recent years, inflows remain well short of what is envisaged under Vision 2030. I'll be looking to see if 2024 is the year we see a surge in these foreign direct investment inflows.
Within the framework of AGSIW's Energy and Climate Initiative, my research focus in 2024 will be on the political implications of COP28 in the Gulf, particularly the intersection between climate change and domestic politics. I identified three main topics of research. One, COP28 ended on an agreement to transition away from fossil fuels, and heads of state also pledged to triple investments in renewable energy by 2030. So what will implementing this objective look like in the various GCC states? Second, data-driven research based on the global stocktake, which was a sort of scorecard to track progress country by country, which will allow me to compare what various GCC members are doing. And finally, during COP28, Gulf countries showcase technological solutions they are heavily investing in. The Gulf now sees the huge economical potential of climate technology and climate investments in general, such as CCS and methane emission cuts in upstream and downstream industries, as well as carbon trading and green hydrogen production and transportation.
The Biden administration came into office with a very clear policy of maintaining regional stability and security in the Middle East and promoting greater regional integration, including with Israel and Gulf Arab countries. And this policy has now reached a crucial testing and inflection point, given the crisis produced by the Hamas-led attack on southern Israel and Israel's subsequent war in Gaza. This policy is under heavy pressure from friend and foe alike. Adversaries like the Houthis with their piracy in the Red Sea attacking international shipping, again underscoring the extent to which U.S. interest in the region is no longer the old shibboleths of oil and Israel, but now definitely includes maritime security in these absolutely central, strategically vital shipping lanes all around the Arabian Peninsula. And it's under pressure from friends. As I'm speaking, Israel is escalating at every stage with Hezbollah, trying, I think, to expand the war into Lebanon as well. It is up to the United States ultimately to take the lead in suppressing Houthi piracy, restoring calm to the shipping waters, and restraining Israel and other factors that could lead to an expanded war. If this is successful in the coming months, then I think the U.S. Credibility as a security guarantor will be upheld, and it should be possible, if President Biden is reelected in November, to rather quickly then get back to the triangular negotiations with Washington, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, looking for new security arrangements and understandings, and the United States could emerge stronger and more credible than ever. But if it fails, it's going to be a historic failure that will really undermine the U.S. security guarantor role in the region.
The war in Gaza is a tragic manifestation of the strategic rivalry between Iran and Israel. This rivalry is likely to continue in 2024, and until Iran reaches strategic parity with Israel, which is not likely to happen anytime soon. And in the meantime, the Arab states and the United States, although they do not want to be involved in this conflict, may get involved, and there is a risk of further escalation of the conflicts in the Middle East region in the year.
This year, I'm going to focus a bit on fallout from the Gaza war on the periphery of the Gulf, on the actions of Iran-supported militias in Iraq and Yemen. In Iraq, militias have conducted more than 100 attacks on U.S. and coalition forces, and U.S. retaliation on Iraqi targets has revived calls for the departure of all U.S. forces from the country. The Iraqi prime minister says he's forming a commission so that that happens. The Pentagon says that no one has yet asked. So there's a lot that's going to happen in the coming year. In Yemen, the Houthis have attacked commercial shipping in the Red Sea that they claim to have some connection to Israel, forcing many shipping companies to divert their cargoes around the Cape of Good Hope. The U.S. Navy has thwarted several attacks and formed a naval task force that has issued a stern warning against further Houthi attacks on commercial shipping. Will U.S. warnings and defensive actions deter the Houthis or merely embolden them? In any case, both of these issues will be big challenges for the Biden administration's foreign policy in the region in the coming year.
There's been a dominant narrative in Gulf policy in the past several years that Gulf countries are extricating from conflicts in the region. I think this is basically true. They have moved to pursuing their interests in ways that rely on soft power, diplomatic maneuver, commerce. But I do want to emphasize that the conflict environment in the periphery area around the Gulf, countries like Syria, Libya, Yemen, and Sudan remains complicated. And Gulf countries have a history of involvement in some of these countries, a relatively complicated history, and as well a more recent history of trying to extricate themselves from these conflicts. And I think both those histories of involvement and extrication will continue in the coming year. One final point I would make, which is that these conflicts are not always expected. The conflict that you expect is not always the conflict that you get. This is very evident in what has happened in Gaza in the past year. So we'll cover these issues in the coming year and focus on the issues that are raised and the impact on relations with the United States.